Welcome to this YouTube channel. In this video we are going to talk about 10 facts to know about Amir Abbas Hoveida. So before starting this video, like this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for future updates. Amir Abbas Hoveida was an Iranian economist and politician who served as the country's prime minister from January 27, 1965, to August 7, 1977. He was the country's longest-serving prime minister. In Mansour's administration, he also served as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. He was prosecuted and executed by the newly constituted Revolutionary Court for waging war against God and spreading corruption on earth after the Iranian Revolution. Here are top 10 facts about Amir Abbas Hoveida. Number 10. Habibullah Hoveida, Ain ul-Mulk, a seasoned diplomat who was largely active during the Qajar dynasty. Afsar ul-Muluk, a descendant of the royal family, was his mother. He was born in Tehran in 1919. Hoveida's father was a lapsed Bahor believer, and Hoveida was not religious himself. He was Abdul Hossein Sadri's nephew, also known as Schindler of Iran. Due to the responsibilities of ambassadors like Ain ul-Mulk, the Hoveida family was never able to stay in one place for an extended period of time. Hoveida had a distinct global flair as a result of his studies in numerous nations, which would become his most enduring quality. Hoveida attended Lycée Français, a French government-affiliated institution, during the family's time in Beirut, Lebanon. His passion for France and its culture stems from his time at the lycée. The young Hoveida was charmed by French literary works like André Gide, André Malraux, Molière, and Baudelaire, which paved the route for his intellectual development. Some speculate that Hoveida's academic prowess was what drew him into the Shah's folds in the first place. Number 9. In 1938, Hoveida's desire to attend a French institution caused him to jump the gun and enter the land of his dreams, without having completed the necessary high school preparations. The potential of armed action by an ostensibly hostile Nazi Germany was cited as the key cause for Hoveida's organizational blunder. His chances of entering a French university would have been hampered by any future occupation of the country. Hoveida, stranded in France, opted to finish his high school credits in London, England, a city that would grow to depress him. Hoveida was able to improve his grasp of the English language, in addition to fulfilling his educational requirements. His ability to speak in a variety of languages, including Persian, French, English, Italian, German, and Arabic, aided him in his subsequent career ascension up the political ladder. Despite this, Hoveida's return to France in 1939 would be brief, due to a simmering diplomatic spat between the French government and Reza Shah Pahlavi. Number 8. Hoveida enrolled at the Free University of Brussels, in Brussels, Belgium, during the same year, having no choice but to leave France again. Because of the effects of the German Blitzkrieg, which used Belgian territory as an entry route into France, his time at university would be brief. Hoveida was able to return to the Belgian university, after being displaced for a brief time, earning a bachelor's degree in political science, in 1941 under the watchful eye of the occupying German authorities. Number 7. Hoveida rested for a few months after returning to Iran in 1942, before enlisting in the Iranian National Army. His intention at the time was to use his conscript experience to boost his seniority at the Foreign Ministry, where he had applied for a job before being conscripted. Hoveida was able to skip boot camp and go straight to the officers' academy because of his better education. Until that moment, Iran's modern prime ministers had been allowed to escape military service, but Hoveida elected to serve freely. Despite his aristocratic roots, Hoveida's decision is significant, in that resources that were plentiful for his predecessors were frequently scarce for the young government employee. Number 6. 8 months later, the Foreign Ministry sent a message confirming Hoveida's appointment. To others, the speed with which Hoveida's application was processed is sufficient evidence that there were powerful forces at work to hasten Hoveida's later employment. These claims, on the other hand, are frequently founded on hearsay rather than verified facts. Hoveida befriended numerous members of Iranian high society during his stint in the ministry, notably Sadek Hedayat and Sadek Chubak. His affection for the country's intelligentsia may be shown in his previous policy as prime minister. Number 5. Hoveida believed that by attempting to strengthen the relationship between the monarchical rule and the intellectual opposition, he could achieve the modest improvements he desired. Others, such as writer and social and political critic Jalal Ali Ahmed, characterized Hoveida's infiltration of Iran's intellectual ranks as sycophancy. Hedayat, on the other hand, and other quirky personalities were quick to spot and rebuff opportunists attempting to take advantage of their social standing. Hoveida's honesty was symbolized by Hedayat, and others who never distanced themselves from him. Number 4. Hoveida would be propelled into the national arena, when the Progressive Circle became a political organization, in the shape of the Iran Novan, New Iran Party in 1963. In 1964, when Prime Minister Hassan Ali Mansour appointed Hoveida as his Minister of Finance, the already seasoned Hoveida would make his mark as the cabinet's intellectual center. Many onlookers, both inside and outside Iran, would be impressed by Hoveida's prudence and foresight. He embodied the archetypal statesman for many. Hoveida's good qualities would once again be obscured by scandal and rumors. During Mansour's first months in office, the administration was chastised for ratifying a statute that gave foreigners extraterritorial powers. Those who profited most from the law were U.S. military personnel and their dependents. These capitulation privileges would have a bad impact on the public's perception of the government at the time. Because the government's actions were required, by law, to reflect the sitting cabinet at the time, regardless of individual ministerial involvement, Hoveida was also held responsible for the bill's execution, despite not having been engaged in its drafting. Number 3. Mansour's assassination by a 17-year-old devotee of the Fadiani Islam on January 21, 1965, would fundamentally change Hoveida's future. He was asked to assemble a cabinet, as he personally delivered the news to an apparently distressed Shah. Hoveida would succeed Mansour, who died in office, as Iran's longest-serving prime minister. It's worth noting, however, that the dictatorial Mohammad Reza Shah has systematically suppressed prior prime ministers including Ali Amini, Haj Ali Razmara, and Mohammad Mosaddeghi's sense of autonomy. The king maintained his international image as a constitutional monarch during his relatively successful attempt to consolidate power, but Hoveida's tenure as prime minister attests to how this representation was not an objective reflection of realities. The leadership of Hoveida would be the fulcrum of his fight to such impotence. Because of the continual character assassination he received from the late Tofi magazine, Iran's most popular political satire magazine, Hoveida became a household figure in Iran. Before Tofi advertised Hoveida, he was largely unknown among Iran's population. In Tofi's monthly magazine, he was caricatured with a cane, caused by a traffic accident in which he was engaged, one carnation in his suit jacket pocket, and a pipe in his mouth. He was dubbed the Caned One by Tofi magazine, which spent an entire book to expose his inadequacies as a premier, named Asaname. The journal, and the Iranian media in general, repeatedly chastised and mocked Hoveida, mostly because they wanted to attack the Shah directly but couldn't owing to restrictions. Number 2. The early part of Hoveida's premiership is characterized by optimism. Hoveida attempted to entice many members of the intellectual community, as well as the opposition, into an informal accord with the dictatorship in 1966, as previously noted. Despite the fact that talks between the two sides eventually fell through, Hoveida never forgot what a collaboration between the two may have accomplished. Because of his realistic approach to politics, he was able to imagine a gradual reform process that could be implemented through action. This is in stark contrast to the course taken by many Iranian intellectuals at the time, which included improbable answers to issues like electoral corruption and media repression. Many of the reform measures started by the Mansour government were picked up by Hoveida. Reform initiatives outlined by the Shah during the White Revolution, in particular. He would even allocate government revenue to the ecclesiastical elite, despite being a secularist. The Shah saw the clerical institution as a bulwark against communism, and he consistently reinforced it, a policy that the Shah would later regret. Number 1. Hoveida was escorted to the Refa School, a makeshift headquarters for the vanguard of the revolt. Because the Shah and much of the ruling class had fled, Hoveida had become the former government's most valuable prisoner. He appeared before the newly constituted Revolutionary Court for the first time on March 15, 1979. He endeavored to draft his legal arguments for the court during this time. He was interviewed by Belgian journalist Christine Ocron, in which Hoveida was subjected to near accusatory questions from the interviewer. Sadek Kalkali, the clerical judge appointed by Khomeini, became known as the hanging judge because of his brutal attitude to revolutionary justice. What do you think about this video? Do let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from us again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.